Sean starts by saying, any chance of a bit of talk about the football? Sick of hearing about the Spider-Man masks.
Yeah.
I mean, we can talk about football, but I think we kind of still, there's a few odds and ends, Keith, regarding to something that we need to touch on.
I'm kind of, I feel Sean's pain. It's been a bit of a bruising week, hasn't it, reputationally, for Scottish football, for Celtic and Rangers in particular. And it just goes on and on. Today we had the Chief Constable and the Assistant Chief Constable of Police Scotland appearing at Holyrood, answering questions to MSPs about what happened at Ibrox at the weekend. And by the way, what's really interesting is, I think there's an accusation here by the police that the clubs have said nothing. They're absolutely right. The clubs haven't said anything, which is pretty shameful. I said last night they should have been out long before now to take a bit of ownership, maybe reprimand some people. They've said and done nothing, which I don't think is acceptable, really. I mean, they're supposed to be big front-facing organisations. You can't cower away behind your desk on this one. Get out in front of it, own it, and take responsibility and tell us what you've got to do about it. But they've said nothing. But the police as well, they're sitting in there in front of Holyrood saying, oh, well, it wasn't anything to do with us. So basically what you've got here, as far as I can see, is Celtic fans blaming the Rangers fans and the cops, the Rangers fans blaming the Celtic fans and the cops blaming the Rangers fans and the Celtic fans, and nobody at any point seems to be man enough here to put the hand up and say, do you know what? We should have done better. We should have been better. And, I guess therein lies the problem. If nobody's ever going to take accountability or accept a proportion of the blame, then how do we go about fixing it?
No, exactly.
You just end up in ever-decreasing circles here. We have to be bigger than this. The people that are, in charge of policing the streets have to be bigger than that. The two clubs that pride themselves on being institutions and leading voices in the Scottish game, they have to be bigger and better than this. And ultimately, the absolute morons who came onto the pitch and caused all this at the weekend, they've got to be bigger and better than that. Listen, what's the chances of that happening? It looks, between none and slim right now, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And we've got plenty of comments coming in on this as well. We will talk a little bit later on about the big news from the Premiership this afternoon regarding Stephen Robinson, Keith. He's been given permission to speak to Aberdeen about their, I mean, what has it been, about 10 weeks since Jimmy Tilleen left?
10 weeks. And Lutz Fannensteel's Phileas Fogg World Tour, and they've gone to Paisley. They've gone to Paisley to get a guy who's currently going through his worst run in I don't know how many years it's been. It's unbelievable. It really is unbelievable. And that to me smacks of a club pressing the big red panic button because they're starting to look at the Championship in the eyeballs now.
Yeah.
So instead of sticking to their big ideas, their grand plans, absolute panic merchants. If we can take St Mirren's manager, that'll probably give them a problem. Might be enough to give us a comfort blanket, and they're not thinking any longer term here than till the end of the season. And I have to say as well, as much as I've been a massive admirer of everything that Stephen Robinson's done at St Mirren, and no wonder. If I was picking a manager from another Scottish club right now, I'd be going to Lanarkshire and Motherwell rather than Paisley. But again, even they could have even said that Jens Bertolascu would have fitted in with the plan, and people would have said, well, right enough, that does make sense. You want foreign, you want Scandinavian, you want front foot, aggressive, new style of football, something contemporary. Well, it just so happens that guy was in their backyard. But they've gone the other way. They've ripped everything up that they ever claimed that they were concentrating on. Emergency plan B. And good luck to Stephen Robinson. He really deserves this opportunity because he's been terrific. But it's an odd time to go and get him because he's having his worst time as St Mirren manager right now.
We've got tons of comments coming in on that, which we will get to. And our resident transfer guru, Scott Burns, Aberdeen is very much his beat. He'll be on very soon to give us the lowdown on that. But going back to the policing stuff, Keith, we've got a few comments that'll throw your way. Rangers Ezekiel says the old Bill took no responsibility for anything, played a huge part in what happened on Sunday. Told part of the reason the ticket was £53 was to pay for policing. I should be due a refund. Wilkinson says it's a deflection on part of the police. Smell the Glove says Celtic board always say nothing. Mark says it's cowards in both boardrooms. John says everyone seems to be using it wasn't me defence. Jan as well. Where was the police? How did they manage to create a line in front of the Celtic fans to protect them? Rangers fans shouldn't have gone that far. Look, I don't know anything about policing, obviously, right? But it looked to me, we've talked about it, Keith, but it looked to me that there was a real obvious lack of policing at the weekend. That's
I'll let you in on a secret, Dan.
Go on.
My old man was a detective chief superintendent.
Wow.
Was often in charge of policing Old Firm matches, big games. Was actually in the middle of the pitch at Hampden Park in 1980 during the riot, taking bodies, collaring people. So I've actually got a fairly kind of decent kind of take on what's required, and I think he'd be mortified with the way that was run at the weekend, or the way it wasn't run. And I also heard the assistant chief constable today saying, well, the next step, everything was under control, and the next step was, and what did I say on last night's show? There was a picture there that the horses, the mounted police officers, and they weren't deployed. Why weren't they deployed? What exactly was it they were waiting for? What exactly was going to be the next step?
Aye.
I mean, it was madness. It was. I just thought the police completely. I don't know if they were being naive, if they underestimated it, if they just don't know what they're doing. But this fixture has been perfectly well policed for years and years. When it was full away allocations, the police went AWOL at the weekend. And they've got a lot of explaining to do. And marking your own homework and saying that you're perfectly satisfied with what you did isn't good enough.
I think it's bizarre that they've taken that line.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Because what does it tell you? It tells you that there's nothing to learn from on our part. That's really unnerving for me. Because if they think that was properly policed, then we've got more trouble ahead. Now, talking of which, Dan, it's my understanding that the SPFL has already been in talks with the police about the next one, the post-split Old Firm game at Celtic Park. As things stand, as I'm led to believe anyway, there has been no attempt to alter the agreement which is already in place for this season in terms of away allocations. So as things stand, Rangers will get the same allocations they had previously, which is about 2,500, I think, for that corner at the away end at Celtic Park. Let me tell you something. The police better up their game, because whether it's inside the stadium, around the stadium, during the match, when these people are in situ, they have to be far more mindful and visible than they were at the weekend. They have to do their job. None of that excuses what went on at the weekend, by the way. I come back to that. And I think about, talking about my dad there. See, if I'd jumped on the pitch that age and you'd go home and you'd get your...
my God. Aye.
You'd get a beating.
You wouldn't have a home.
Aye, well, exactly.